Okay, so I just had a moment of panic. I pulled out what I thought were my notes, and they were my notes from yesterday. And I was like, we're going to be in trouble. They're in a different part of my Bible here. There we go. Panic averted. All right. Proverbs 13. Proverbs 13. Let's just read this first, and then we can get into the commentary. Really just a handful of things I want to look at. Proverbs 13, verse 1. A wise son accepts his father's discipline, but a scoffer does not listen to rebuke. From the fruit of a man's mouth he eats what is good, but the soul of the treacherous desires violence. The one who guards his mouth keeps his soul. The one who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. The soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, but the soul of the diligent is enriched. A righteous man hates a lying word, but a wicked man acts odiously and is humiliated. Righteousness guards the one whose way is blameless, but wickedness subverts the sinner. There is one who pretends to be rich but has nothing, and another who pretends to be poor and yet has great wealth. The ransom of a man's life is his wealth, but the poor hears no rebuke. The light of the righteous is glad, but the lamp of the wicked goes out. With arrogance comes only quarreling, but with those who receive counsel is wisdom. Wealth obtained from empty effort dwindles, but he who gathers with his hands abounds. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but desire fulfilled is a tree of life. The one who despises the word will be in debt to it, but the one who fears the commandment will be rewarded. The instruction of the wise is a fountain of life, to turn aside from the snares of death. Good insight gives grace, but the way of the treacherous is unrelenting. Every prudent man acts with knowledge, but a fool spreads folly. A wicked messenger falls into evil, but a faithful envoy brings healing. Poverty and disgrace come to him who neglects discipline, but he who keeps reproof is honored. Desire realized is pleasant to the soul, but it is an abomination to fools to turn away from evil. He who walks with the wise will be wise, but a friend of fools will suffer harm. Evil pursues sinners, but the righteous are repaid with good. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of a sinner is stored up for the righteous. Abundant food is in the fallow ground of the poor, but it is swept away by injustice. He who holds back his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him diligently. The righteous eats to the satisfaction of his soul, but the stomach of the wicked lacks. So there are several repeated themes that we've hinted at or discussed a little bit prior to this. You see some of these like work ethic, words, the righteous. He talks about the sluggard. Again, that's the work ethic thing, the opposite side of having a good work ethic. I love that name. It's a word I think we should bring back. Do y'all have do you have a different translation for that word in there? The sluggard.
Which verse?
Oh, yeah, verse 4.
Nope.
The soul of the sluggard. Lazy, that kind of guy who doesn't. He's always got an excuse or something like that. So these are things, and we'll come back to some of these again in later chapters. And so what I'm kind of doing is picking a handful of topics that are redundant or get addressed multiple times in the book of Proverbs, and each week kind of focusing on a handful of those things. And so this week will be no different than that. And so I want us to look at these three things: our words, our mouth, which we've already talked about, but we'll talk about a little bit more, our associates or who we associate with, and then parenting. And the reason for that is parenting, or something along the lines of parenting, gets mentioned about 4 times: verse 1, verse 14, verse 22, and verse 24, which we'll get at here in a minute. Let's look at verse 3 for a second. Verse 3, 13:3, the one who guards his mouth keeps his soul, but the one who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. How would you say that in your own vernacular?
Learn to shut up.
Yeah.
Keep your mouth shut, yeah.
Yeah.
Speak words wisely.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Be quiet, speak words wisely.
Speak in the most absolute terms possible.
In the most absolute terms possible.
Quote.
Yeah, so the idea of guarding your mouth, not just, we have a phrase we call somebody that, quote, runs their mouth. Your mouth doesn't actually run, but there's it's like a flow, it's like a fountain, right? It's like a water hydrant that just keeps spewing, nonsense or whatever the case may be.
Word vomit.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the one who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. The idea that his mouth is like this stretched hose that is just spewing nonsense and goofiness. And this harkens back to our discussion last week, 12:16, verse 18 and 23. Says a lot of this kind of same thing. So I'm going to read 12:16. An ignorant fool's anger is known at once, but a prudent man, what does he do? Ignores an insult or conceals disgrace. He doesn't say he doesn't say what immediately pops into his mind. Notice again, verse 16, look in verse 18. The one who speaks rashly. What does it mean to speak rashly?
I always think it means, or it always comes off as without a whole lot of thought. Like
That's exactly right.
you're just unfiltered getting it out.
Unfiltered, whatever comes into somebody's head comes out of their mouth. There's no filter. Somebody who speaks rashly, verse 18, like the thrusts of a sword. You get the picture? This guy's like stabbing people with a sword. He's just running his mouth, right? Constantly. But the tongue of the wise brings healing. Fewer words spoken at the right time that are chosen wisely are much better. The fool doesn't know not only when to shut up, but he constantly just blabbers and blabbers and blabbers. Where there are many words, there will be unrighteousness almost positively. That's actually a proverb. I don't have the verse for you. Verse 23. A prudent man, what does he do? Conceals knowledge, but the heart of the fool proclaims folly. You see the analytical side, or not analytical, antithetical. One guy is quiet and considered more intelligent. He's wise. He guards what he says. The other guy is just rash. He is proclaiming folly. His mouth is wide open, as it says in 13:3. He has open. His mouth is open wide. His lips are constantly running, kind of thing. James 1:19 in the New Testament. You probably remember this verse, and if you don't, it would be a good one to that it kind of encapsulates a lot of this teaching. James 1:19. It says, "Be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." So it's a direct commandment that really kind of encompasses this teaching in the book of Proverbs about what we are to say, how we are to say it, and what our attitude needs to be. Be quick to hear. In other words, we want to anticipate or be on the edge of our seat, listening carefully to what people say. A lot of times what happens is that people are just waiting to speak, or they're constantly interrupting or something like that. That's what fools do. The wise man, what does he do? He's listening. He's listening carefully. And I will tell you something. This serves us well on multiple fronts. Okay, it serves us well with our families, with our wives. It'll serve you well. One of the biggest complaints that wives have is that husbands don't listen to them. I know because my wife says that. And there are times, you think there are words coming out of her mouth, but I don't know what she's saying. oh crap, that was a question. When the tone goes up at the end, you're kind of like, oh crap. She just asked me something.
That sounds really tough.
Yeah, then you start this double speak. That's right. Oh man, wow.
I'd like to hear more, but
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Bill Burr's got a whole bit about this, and that's exactly what he says. He's like, oh, you just start double talking. I don't know, you win some, you lose some. It would serve us well with our marriages. It would serve you well with your friendships. No one wants to be around the guy that is constantly just running his mouth and talking all the time. Conversations are meant to be two ways and things like that. In business, I'll tell you, I don't have a lot of great sales skills. I'm not slick. I'm probably just a little over the median line on intelligence. But when it comes to listening, I'm a pretty good listener with my customers. I let them talk, and I try to ask good questions. I formulate and think about the questions that I'm going to ask, and when they start telling stuff, this is why I have this little black book. I carry it with me, and I write down what they say. If they tell me about their kids, I write down their kids and their names, and I ask them about that. If they tell me, they will tell you what they care about, and then when it comes down strictly to business stuff, anything they give me, I write it all down. I've gotten up and said, hey, I need to go to the restroom real quick. I didn't need to go to the restroom. I go to the restroom and write more stuff down because they're talking too fast or something like that. It will serve you well in business. It will serve you well in personal interactions. Be careful. Be slow to speak. Be quick to listen. I want to listen. I want to hear what somebody has to say. There was a guy one time that used to be my boss that was way, way, way more intelligent, smart, wise than I am. And there was a situation at work where I felt like I was kind of being done wrong is really not the right word, but there's a misunderstanding about the state of affairs, and I took a little bit of offense, and I'm pretty quick to not take offense at things. It takes a lot, but I felt like I was about to get hosed, and I was. Come to find out, I was actually about to get hosed on a deal, and so I kind of kicked up a little dust about it and stuff like that. And my boss, here's how he handled me. And what was funny was I knew that he was handling me. Do you ever be in that situation where you know you're being handled? And I usually say, "Don't handle me." I'm pissed off and I need to, or whatever. But he said, "Okay." He said, "Cody," he said, "Tell me about it." That's all he said. Tell me about it. And I did. And I just, everything that was going on. And he looked at me at the end of this and he said, "Thank you for that. You taught me something." That's what he told me. He said, "You taught me something." And I was kind of taken aback because I anticipated him being defensive and kind of pushing back on me and stuff like that. And he said, I said, "Well, Bob, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I didn't know that was a scenario. You've explained this to me in a way that makes a lot of sense." And like I say, I was a little hot. He wasn't hot at all. He didn't take any offense to that at all. He looked at the situation objectively. He was quick to listen. He wanted to know. He didn't already have his mind made up about how things were. He had what he thought was a good idea about the situation, but come to find out, his understanding was incorrect. And I learned more. Yes, there are times you need to push back on people and all that kind of stuff, but the main thing that I learned through that interaction was not so much that I needed to push back when things were sideways, but how he as a leader handled me as an employee in that situation. I thought, wow, that was really good, the way he did that. And come to find out, he was just giving bad information about some things. And he owned that and was like, "Hey, yeah, you taught me something." And he said, we're gonna fix this and make it right. Give me a little bit and we'll come back and talk about it some more and see what we can do. He was quick to listen. And one of the reasons I respect him to this day is that he's like that. He's the guy that when you meet him, he's by far my financial superior. But he first thing he does is he asks you about you. And he listens. And he remembers things. He'll say, well, hey, how's Jet doing? He knows my kids' names. How's Jet doing at A&M? You know, everything, you know, he'll ask about, you know, things that he knows that I'm interested in and things like that. Like he's made a mental note to know about those things. That's really important. It's really important in business. It works well with your relationships. It'll work well with your kids. We'll talk about that here in a minute. So this idea of being on guard about your mouth, being careful what you say, and being quick to listen. Someone who's always talking, whose mouth is wide open, comes to ruin. And so, yes, sometimes we need to shut our word holes. Shut up, be quiet. There's a time to speak and there's a time to listen. And the wise man knows when those things are. Okay? And I would commend to you that as a point of prayer, Lord, teach me, help me understand discipline or discernment on when I need to. Because there is a time to say something. You need to speak up and you need to whether it's get some things off your chest or address an issue. And sometimes that involves confrontation, and a lot of times people don't like that. But this is talking about the fool who is always overly confrontational. Everything's a confrontation. You notice how James associates these things. He says, be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. There's the fool is often angry. He is often frustrated. He is often pissed off about something. I had a friend, a mentor, tell me one time, he said, frustration is the result of unmet expectations. If you think if you're idealistic and you think that the world should always go well and there shouldn't be any problems, or that those problems shouldn't be happening to you because you're somehow special or something, yeah, you're going to stay frustrated.
You're going to stay disappointed.
Disappointed, frustrated, mad, angry. And I'll tell you, I lived a large portion of my life being that way. And it's absolutely foolish. It's stupid. Moving on, verse 20. Verse 20 is kind of a personal thing for me because this is the first verse that I memorized other than John 3:16, it was the second verse I ever memorized in the entire Bible. Proverbs 13:20, he who walks with the wise, this is the way I memorized it, he who walks with the wise grows wise, but a companion of fools suffers harm. How would you say that in your own way? What would you say? How do you summarize that verse or that proverb? He who walks with the wise grows wise, but a companion of fools suffers harm.
Choose your companions wisely.
Why? Yes. Why? What does the verse say? Because
one will bring you to wisdom, the other will bring you harm.
And you're much more influenced. You're much more influenced by the people you put yourself around than you imagine.
yes.
You're much more open to influence than you imagine.
Yes.
And you're also judged by those who you associate with. I learned that one real early on. That's another way to think about that one.
Yeah, that's also true. The idea, I want to come back to that. That's a good point. The idea that I am far more influenced than I'm willing to admit I'm far more influenced by the people I hang out with than I would like to admit. I tell my kids this all the time. Be a leader, not a follower. Knowing good and well that, part of that also has to do, pick good friends, and we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I'm influenced. We are influenced. He who walks with the wise, we become like those that we associate with. That's it. And so when you're picking your friends, what kind of people do you want to pick? Or the people that you associate with, or the people that you hang out with? What do you want to pick?
The people you want to become. You want to image, you want to mirror.
Brad, you were going to say something a minute ago. When I was talking about asking how would you say this in your own way. I thought you looked at me like you were going to pipe up, you had something on the tip of your tongue. Okay. I think this is pretty straightforward, right? That the quality and direction of a person's life is determined by a great extent who they associate with. The quality of your life and the direction of your life. In other words, how well your life is going and how well it's going to be is determined by your friendships, by your association. It's really, really, really important. That's why in the New Testament, there's this word in the New Testament called, the Greek word is koinonia. It just means, it's usually translated fellowship. It's not a word that people use in modern vernacular. What's crazy today is that people don't even have, with the promulgation of online stuff, the idea of eyeball to eyeball, in-person stuff has really, people are lonely. They're lonely, and so what happens is they get sucked into all kinds of sin and craziness, and then they don't have a set of brothers. In the New Testament, you have koinonia, which is the idea of fellowship and togetherness, community. Some people call it community, a sense of camaraderie, a sense of togetherness. Another way that the New Testament talks about it is the old King Jimmy translated it brethren, the brethren, the familial tie that we have as believers to one another because of our common Father. We have a common identity, and that's a really important aspect of the Christian life, of anybody's life, of human existence, really and truly. And so if you want for things to go well for you, what do you need to do as it relates to this issue of being around other people? If you want things to go well, then you need to associate yourself with people who have what you want. Okay? And I do mean that financially, but what I really mean is like character qualities more than anything else. Identify people. If you want to grow in your faith, and find somebody whose faith you admire and attach yourself to them. If you want somebody to teach you how to do business, go find a good business guy and attach yourself to him. And parenting is the same way. Marriage is the same way. You could pick any one of these issues, right? We understand this or at least we used to understand this in vocational studies. If you wanted to become a cobbler, not somebody who makes cobbles, but cobblers, but somebody who makes shoes, what did you do? You went and
You found a shoemaker.
found a shoemaker, and you went and you interned or you became an apprentice. Yeah. And we still do this a little bit with some of the trades, with like journeyman stuff and apprentice stuff with plumbers and electricians and things like that. You have to have a certain number of hours and things like that. It's the same thing. If you want what somebody else has, then you need to become friends with that guy. You need to reach out. He who walks with the wise grows wise, but a companion of fools suffers harm. He ends up in destruction. You hang out with idiots, and you're going to get an idiot's reward. Okay? It's one of the reasons why I don't spend a lot of time at places where idiots congregate. I'll let you figure out where that might be. Yeah. People who are good at things that I'm not interested in being good at. 1 Corinthians 15:33, it's a pretty famous verse with a lot of people know this one. It says, bad company, what does it do?
Corrupts good morals.
Yeah. Bad company corrupts good morals. It's very proverbial sounding, right? Bad company corrupts good morals. So you can be a good dude, but you're around a bunch of knuckleheads, and what's going to happen? Are you going to pull them up, or are they going to pull you down?
They're going to pull you down.
The weight of their nonsense is heavier than you're more likely to be able to hold, right? So
Mom always warned me about it.
That's right. I think Merle Haggard has a song about that. Doesn't Merle Haggard have a song, Mama? What does he say? I'll think of it here in a minute. Mama warned me.
Mama tried.
Mama tried. There it is. Mama tried. That's right. Yeah. Proverbs 18:24. We're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but it's a verse that is helpful here. One who has unreliable friends will come to ruin, but there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. If you have unreliable friends, idiot friends, what'll happen? You'll come to ruin. You come to ruin. And like when I've been walking with guys, especially guys that are new to the faith or, still kind of growing and getting their legs underneath them, like learning this lesson is a really powerful concept that there are some people I just can't be around. I don't need to be around. And while I'm not a huge fan of the modern notion of just like always rooting people out of your life, like there's a whole psychological movement that's about this whole self-actualization, self-awareness crap. But there is some truth to the idea, and we see it here, that I need to be careful who I associate with. I need to be careful who I hang out with. I need to be careful who I let my heart be inclined toward and what they want and things like that. And even people that I admire about things like, for instance, money, I'm very careful to not... I want to be around those guys some, but I don't want to be around them all the time. Okay, because I don't want to get caught up in the trappings of money, right? So that's just a little bit of maybe a hedge on some of this. This is, it's like you said, Mama tried, or Mama always warned you, don't go around those boys and those kids and those guys and stuff like that. This is peer pressure. This is what every parent talks to their kids about. Don't go with the crowd. If you go with the crowd, what's going to happen? Well, they're all running off a cliff. Are you going to run off a cliff too? And I'm like, well, it depends on how far it is.
And how do you
I was in the back of the pack. I didn't even see the clip.
Yeah.
All you see is lemmings.
Yeah.
How do you go downhill?
How do you know who to associate with and who not to? How do you determine that?
It's like you said, go talk to the guys and attach yourself to the people that have the things that you want to what's the word I'm looking for here? Embody.
Yes. And that assumes that you've thought through those things that you want, that are important to you. The business term for that is values. It's what's important, what matters to you. And so I've got my cup with me today, right? We put this together for our kids, and I stole a lot of this from Patrick Payton, okay? I didn't invent all of this, and he stole it from somebody else, And it's a pretty common one. I've added a couple to it, and during COVID I added freedom, by the way. Faith, family, friends, forward movement, fitness, finance, freedom, and fun. Faith, family, friends, those are the top three, and they're all in order. Like we've thought through the order of these things. We review these every year at Thanksgiving. It's part of our family tradition. Faith. I'm looking for people who love the Lord first and foremost. I'm looking for the brothers. Wherever I am, wherever I go, I'm looking for the signs. Is some guy wearing some little fish bracelet? Has he got a cross on? What does he talk about? Faith, family. Is he somebody he's a family guy? He's not out carousing around. Faith, family, friends. Again, these three values, they're all about people, right? God, our family, and then our friends. Faith, family, friends, forward movement. Somebody who's constantly wants to grow, move forward, not just be stagnant and stay still. Fitness, finance, freedom, and fun are all things that we all just need to be concerned with, or at least we've tried to tell our kids. You do have to have money to make things happen, and you need to be sure. When I talk about fitness, what I'm really talking about is being healthy and not buying into the pop a pill mentality. We'll get into that a little bit more about who's responsible for you kind of things. But these 8 F's, these are the things that we've tried to give our kids and that I've developed for myself as a grid for who am I looking for? Who are the POUs, the people like us? That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for POUs to associate with and do life. These are the people with similar values. We need to be selective about who we spend our time with and who we allow into our lives. And truly, we will become like those we hang around with. The quality of our lives will greatly be affected by our friends. And this is one of the reasons why I spend concentrated time praying for you guys, my friends, on Wednesdays, and that I do that for my kids. God, would you give them and help them to seek out good, godly friends, people that they can, other brothers, sisters in the faith that they can they can walk with, and be a part of the great adventure that He's called us to. Anything else you want to talk about that? Stories, comments? So parenting, verse 1. A wise son accepts his father's discipline, but a scoffer does not listen to rebuke. Let's look at this idea of parenting. The wise son, what does he do? What does it say?
Accepts his father's discipline.
Yeah, and this is true with girls too. The teenage exasperated eye roll followed by the sing-song "Dad" is not acceptable in my house. Like, I'm hardcore about this. Like, there are some things that I'm just downright mean and nasty about, and this is one of them. Okay, do not cop a freaking attitude with me, right? I'm not tolerating it. I'm not going to go too far into this, but I've got one right now that every little blue moon, it shows up, and I stick my finger, point it right at her, and I say, no, you're not going to treat me like I'm some idiot. There is an idiot here, but it's not me. And I'm hardcore about it. I do not tolerate this kind of attitude that the world has put. You do realize, men, that the world thinks you're Al Bundy and you're a buffoon, right? That, oh, it's his dad, he's just, no, don't tolerate that crap. A wise son accepts his father's discipline. That means that you're giving discipline. That means that you actually have discipline both for yourself and for them. So this attitude, that attitude must be disciplined out. And to her credit, she's very quick to. She's really good at. Okay, all right. Don't. Even body language, like sloughed over, just this, tongue out, kind of thing. No. I could tell you multiple instances. My head. This is another one that I hear all the time. I don't feel good. I don't care. I don't care that you feel bad. That makes zero difference. Okay? You do not. No one gets a pass because their head hurts, their stomach hurts, or life is hard. Because guess what? That's normal. Everybody has to deal with that. If you don't go to work every time that you don't feel good, you'll never go to work. I can tell you story after story about teenagers and moms who are overly mothered their kids about this kind of stuff. Make your kids go to school, do their work, regardless of how. Now, you can look at them and kind of tell most of the time if something's like their color's off or they're really bad. But do not foster this excuse-making victimhood in your home. Don't do it. Okay? You want to, I hate to say it this way, but create winners. Like, quit creating losers. Quit creating people who don't accept their father's discipline, who are constantly making excuses for themselves and looking for a way out. It should not be tolerated. The world is teaching your kids that your instruction is out of date and irrelevant. So, with the system promoting the most asinine ideas known to man, considering gender and sexuality, finance, sociology, and almost every other topic, you need to become the primary influencer of your kids. And if you're going to have them in public school, this is going to be an uphill battle. It may be a little easier if you go to private school or homeschool, but you still need to address it. It's not going to fix that problem just by pulling them out of that. It may help it some. But you need kids. The first lesson that kids need to learn is that they need to be learners. Their job as a kid is to learn. And it's your job as a dad to teach. They need to be teachable with an open heart and an open head, with a good attitude. Secondly, we need to remember the outcome of good teaching. It gives us the reasoning behind what we do. It gives us the why. Verse 14. Instruction of the wise. The instruction of the wise, what is it?
Fountain of life.
Fountain of life. To turn aside what?
Snares of death.
From the snares of death. Wise instruction saves people. Literally saves people. We could go around the room and tell stories about people who didn't learn self-discipline and didn't learn these things, and they just gave themselves, and whether it's the natural consequences of their behavior because they drank themselves into the grave, or they made a stupid decision and landed themselves in prison, or whatever the case may be. Life and death really do hang in the balance. And so the reasoning behind why we do what we do is that you're saving your kids from destruction and from pain and from sin. You're standing in the gap as the emissary of God to shepherd their souls. You're fighting off the wolves and the devil himself. You're God's man in the house, battling the evil one by instructing and shaping the minds of your children. And I would say grandchildren if you've got them. A godly father is God's representative, showing the path of life and righteousness. Even secular psychology recognizes the evil or negative effects of fatherlessness. If dad's not there to do his job, what happens?
It all falls apart.
Everything falls apart. Suicide, teenage pregnancy, mental illness, incarceration are all drastically increased for children who do not grow up without a dad. It's no wonder why. Because when the man of God is not present, the protection is removed. And it's a shooting spree for the evil one. And so, be sure that your instruction is not haphazard. This is important, that your instruction be intentional. You need to know the lessons that you want to teach. Think through the things that you want to impart. For us, this is what we settled on, and I'm certainly open to other ideas on this because I want to learn. I want to do better for my kids and hopefully pretty soon grandkids. We had these goofy little hand motions. I tried to distill it into 4 things. We pointed up in the sky and we said, we want you to love God. Love God. More than anything else, we want you to love God. Your affections, your heart, your attitude, all that you have genuine, true, that you love God. Number 2, you point to your head, think to yourself, or think for yourself. That this doesn't need to just be mom and dad's faith, but it needs to be your faith. You need to understand this and know why and the how, and so we would interact with them on different things. You need to be a thinker. You need to be a critical thinker about the world and how things work. So love God, think for yourself. And the third one was point at their chest. Take care of your business. And I'll tell you, this was a catch-all. Like, we piled a bunch of stuff in number 3. Take care of your business. Anytime my kids weren't where they needed to be, take care of your business. Anytime they weren't doing stuff that they needed to be doing, you're not taking care of your business. Anytime they were late, you're not taking care of your business. Anytime that homework was not done, or you're not taking care of business. And that's what it was just a catch-all that meant do everything that you know to do and don't do anything that you're not supposed to do. Right? We didn't have a lot of rules. We had principles. I don't believe in a lot of rules. I think you know what's right and you know what's wrong. You appeal to the heart, not to the law necessarily, right? There were some things that they knew absolutely that they shouldn't do. But I cannot count one time where I told my kids, you know the rule. I never said that. I would say things like, you're not loving God. Is this loving God? Are you thinking for yourself? Or I would say, are you taking care of business? Are you taking care of business? So I framed everything kind of in that way. And the last one, so we love God, think for ourselves, take care of our business, so that, point out, we can help those who can't help themselves. And can't is the operative term there, not won't. There are people that God has put in our lives, widows and orphans specifically, that the Bible talks about, that have no protection that we want to provide. And so you can't give what you don't have. And if you don't have an abundance and you haven't lived below your means, you can't give anything to those people, both financially and of your time and effort and mentoring and all the rest. And so those were kind of the 4 things that we talked about. Other catchphrases included things like, you are responsible for you. Or I would say, who is responsible for you? This is how we eliminated excuse making. Oh, well, you didn't do it. No. You didn't get up on time? Who's responsible for you? We did not get our kids up in the mornings. We did not do laundry. my son, to this day, I mean, they look down. I've created a little bit of, there's some backlash to this. You got to be careful that you don't create these little Pharisees, you know, that are like, you know, well, you're better than everybody else. You know, I'm like, let me tell you something. You know, I'll slap you upside your head. I don't care if you are 6'4". Like Jet would say, that guy, he doesn't even know how to do laundry. Like our kids were doing laundry when they were 5. They know how to fix a sandwich, go to the, you know, go get some food. When they're 13, they get bank accounts. We start sending. They do expense reports at 13. It's due at 5 o'clock on the last Friday of the month. When's the last Friday of the month? You got a phone. Figure it out. Okay. What happens if it comes in at 5:01? I don't know how email works. I don't know. You better figure it out. You are responsible for you. I will reimburse approved expenses if they're in on time. If they're not in on time, what happens? Sucks to be you, right? I ain't paying it. I'm not paying it this month anyway. I'll consider paying it next month. And I don't pay for everything. I don't pay for, I'll buy shoes, but I'm not buying Jordans, right? I'll buy food, but I'm not buying ice cream every week. I'm not joking. I know it sounds like I'm a hard ass, but I was a hard ass. About if you want something, go get it. Go earn some money, learn the value of $1, and these were things these were lessons I wanted my kids to understand how money worked. I wanted them to understand personal discipline, to be able to take care of themselves. These kinds of things, and so the instruction is a fountain of life. And so now, guess what? Because of the way we did school when they went to college, you know what? They were used to getting syllabus and understanding that there are due dates, and they needed to work their calendar. They knew how to use the technology and laptops and all that kind of stuff. That's what's funny. Kids know how to play games on phones and iPads, but they don't know how to use a laptop. They don't know how to use email and spreadsheets. Okay, these are all things, and that includes that, but it also includes things like how to plunge a toilet. 9 times out of 10, if your toilet's messed up, what happens? You clogged it up, right? You did that poop lasagna, and now we got a problem, right? So give it the old plunge, and rinse that thing off in the bathtub, and put it back where you can find it again. And another one would be,
make sure you're using the right plunger too.
Yes, there's 2 different kinds of plungers. The sink one will work sometimes, kind of. When you're in a jam. The other one is the toilet valve. That's the other thing that always goes bad. And if you're going to turn the water off to the toilet, support the valve before you turn it. Don't just crank that sucker off and break it off, okay? These are all things, like I'm not joking. These are all things, checking your oil, putting gas in your car. Every time you put gas in the truck, walk around, literally kick the tires, pop the hood, and check the oil. These are all things that they know how to make food. We were trying to raise adults, not raise kids. What are all the things that adults need to know how to do? Get themselves up, personal discipline, and all this kind of stuff. And the point of all of that is that the point of discipline is to teach them to love discipline, self-discipline. Teaching your kids to be at an early age, as young as 2. You don't get everything that you want, and being able to say no to yourself. No. You don't get to eat donuts every meal. Yeah, sure, we'll eat donuts on Sunday or whatever, but personal discipline about these things. Because what happens for people who don't learn self-discipline, who don't learn to make themselves do things they don't want to do? What kind of people do they turn out to be? Somebody who has no
reality teaches them.
Yeah, we have a thing called jail for most of those people, right? People who just they're just led by their passions to do whatever they want. It does not work out well for them. Verse 24, he who holds back the rod, what does he do? Hates his son. He who holds back his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him diligently. Certainly, we're not making any kind of excuses for abuse or over-discipline or something like that. I think I hope you know that. However, in our culture, we most of the time have the opposite problem. It's not that we have too much discipline, it's that we have
Too little lack thereof.
none. Yeah, there's almost zero. I'll give you a quick example. Our kids could get away with a little more at home than they could in public. Not much. But God help the poor soul who embarrassed us in public. You act like that out in front of a bunch of people, it's going to be a race to see whether, and this is the other thing too, you and your wife need to be on the same page on this. Okay? You need to talk about we're loving our kids, and she needs to allow you to do what you need to do as a dad. A lot of moms, what do? They want to protect the kids. He's mean. Y'all need to have an understanding about, look, we love our kids. I love these girls. I love this boy. I want them to be godly men and women. I want them to be mighty men and mighty women of the faith. And so I'll just tell you, for years of working with teenagers, you could pick out, and I can't tell you how many times I heard this story, where parents just let their kids do whatever they want. And the kids have this hollow feeling inside of them because they know that their parents don't give a rip about them. A lack of discipline implies explicit a lack of love. The Bible says it right there. He who does not discipline his kids, what does he do? He hates them. You want to know why? Because he's selfish. He's lazy. He's only concerned about himself. Because discipline's hard. It's hard, right? I don't enjoy getting after my kids about stuff, except to the extent that I know that it's helpful and beneficial to them and will be good to them. Sometimes, like I'll tell you, I could go on for days about the crazy stuff that we had. When Jet was 2, he was strong-willed. JC, easy as pie, right? Jess was a freaking hurricane, okay? But like Jet, at 2 years old, he was screaming and yelling and flipping out and losing his mind and was jumping out of the bed. Shayla locked him in his room and he's kicking the door and all this stuff. She calls me and I'm like, did you whip him? And she's like, Cody, if I whip him anymore, it's not going to be good. Like, it's not working, right? And I was out of town and by the way, you need to be the heavy. You need to be aligned, and we were. She was almost as heavy as I was. God help those kids if she gets after them, right? She was almost as bad as me. But
no fury.
Oh man, I mean she would come after her, man. And there were times where both of us helped each other moderate some things on severity and things like that. But with him, he was just really, really strong-willed, and he has a ridiculously high pain tolerance. So spankings, we believe in spankings. Spankings work when kids are little. They have diminishing returns as they get older. We had to figure out other ways of doing things, taking things away. You figure out whatever the capital is with your kids, whatever's effective, and some of it's just pragmatics. But here's the thing. If you do that, you do it well and you do it right. You think about the lessons you want to teach them, you enforce those things, and there needs to be positive and negative consequences, right? There needs to be... I don't know how to say this without it sounding a little demeaning. Raising kids is kind of like raising dogs, right? Your kids, what do you do with your dog? If you have dogs, if you train dogs, what do?
Incentivize good behavior, discipline bad behavior.
It really comes down to those two. When they're young. And here's the thing, if you do it when they're young, you make believers out of them when they're young. They when I say make believers, I'm not just talking about they fall in line because you're a drill sergeant, but they learn to love what you love. They understand the value that you talk about these things. You disciple your kids. You walk them through the scriptures. Then here's what happens. What are you doing for your kids? What does the Bible say you're doing? You're loving them. And here's the other one. Let's read this one. We'll close on this. Verse 22. A good man, what does he do? Leaves an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner stored up for the righteous. That inheritance, does it mean money? Sure, probably. I think that it, especially in this context, that it's much more than that. You're leaving a legacy of faithfulness. What does the law say about people who honor their father and their mother? It'll go well with them in the land. They'll live a long life. If you want to give your kids something, give them a legacy of faithfulness to the Lord, of greatness. Teach them well. Give them an identity that goes with your name. Things like, this is who we are. Phrases like, this is what we do. Those are things that they need to hear. Things like church involvement are non-negotiables. In our house, there are things that weren't up for grabs. Personal hygiene was a big one about, being responsible for you. You are responsible for you. Brushing teeth, I'll tell you, Jess and I got really, really, really sideways over the teeth brushing incident because she was faking her brushing teeth. And I was like, look, it's the only set you got. And they're going to be with you for the rest of your life. And if you don't brush them now and you end up with cavities, you're going to be dealing with this for the rest of your life. And I would be a poor father if I didn't teach you this lesson now, kind of thing. It's hard when they're young, and they change, and the difficulties change. But if you do that over time, and you parent with the end in mind, I'll tell you, some people are like, man, teenagers are horrible, and I hate raising teenagers. That by the grace of God, and I mean that was not our experience. We have had challenges about certain things, but I'll tell you, by and large, they love the Lord, they're serving Him faithfully, and we've had a ton of fun. I love them much more as teenagers than I did when they were little. And I mean that. Like, they were much more pleasant to be around as they got older. And they have our values and things like that. And we're genuinely proud in a good way, not in a huff, huff, huff kind of way. Love is not about affection as much as it is about sacrifice. You do what is best for the other person, regardless of the cost. Not because I like you, but because I love you. Because, now, I may like you, but I would rather, you want love over like any day of the week. Love is committal. Leave a legacy, leave an inheritance. Questions, comments? Father, we commit ourselves to you new and afresh today. We pray that indeed you'd help us to be careful with our tongues, what we say, be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. We do pray that you would help us to walk with the wise and therefore grow wise. Help us to be those men as well for others. We pray that for those that you've put under our care, whether they be wives or children or grandchildren or people at work, that you would help us to be the kind of men that they would want to be. And we pray that you'd receive the glory and you'd get the attention for that, and that it wouldn't be out of ourselves. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.